How's that? Good morning. Wonderful, beautiful day we're having out there, isn't it? For March. Well, as we continue on in our series, I wanted to open up with a story that I heard about a mother that was in the grocery store, and she was pushing her little 2-year-old in a cart doing the shopping. And the little girl kept asking, "Cookies, cookies!" And the mother says, "Now, honey, Missy, we're halfway done. We're almost done. It won't be long." And she keeps yelling at Mommy, "Cookies, cookies, cookies!" And the mother says, There, Missy. Only 2 more aisles and we'll be done." And she walks a little further and she sees her little girl once again just freaking out, losing it. "Cookies! Cookies! Cookies!" The mother says, "Missy, we'll be through the checkout soon. Just wait a little bit, just 5 more minutes, and then we can go home and both take a nap." Well, a man's walking down the aisle the other way, and he notices this, and he says to the mother, he says, "Ma'am, I just want to say that I am amazed at your patience. I am amazed at your encouragement and how you're encouraging your little girl like this." She says, "Missy's got a wonderful mommy." She says, "Sir, you don't understand. I'm Missy." Sometimes we need words of encouragement, even if they're coming from ourselves, to get through the stressors in life. In Proverbs chapter 12, verse 18, from the translation The Message, it says, "Rash language cuts and maims, but there is healing in the words of the wise." It's good to say nice things and encourage one another. This is a language of love. It's a language that Jesus spoke very well. And in our passage today, from Matthew chapter 8, verses 5 through 13, we are going to learn a few lessons on words of encouragement and how we can see Christ speaking those words and how we can learn from those words and how we can be that type of person who encourages rather than discourages. So let's look at this passage this morning. In Matthew chapter 8, verse 10, it says, "When Jesus heard this, he marveled and said to those who followed him, 'Truly I tell you, with no one in Israel have I found such faith.'" Now, to give you some background about this scripture, this is talking about a centurion. He is a Roman soldier who has a servant that is ill. And this man, a Roman, comes to Jesus, a Jew, believing that he can do something for his servant. He cares about his servant. He wants his servant to get better. He wants him to live. So he comes to Christ and he shows faith and says, "Heal him. I believe you can." Well, when Jesus experiences this faith from this man, we see that he encouraged the man in front of others by saying what he did in verse 10. "Truly I tell you, with no one in Israel have I found such faith." Now imagine that. Jesus is a Jew. He's coming to the Jews. And yet he says, this Roman soldier has more faith than any of you. He saw that this man was needing something, and he was asking for it, and he believed Jesus could give it. Jesus commended the man by saying to the crowd that he had not seen faith as great as this man's in all of Israel. If a person's love language is encouraging words, the best thing you can do is encourage them in front of other people. You know, don't just privately tell somebody, hey, nice job. Sometimes it's nice to say that in front of others so they can be recognized. Like last week when we had Dean come up and we acknowledged that he is being a good caregiver to his mom. Those things are needed. It's good to say words of praise and words of encouragement out in public. It means a lot. Story is told about a preacher. He was getting ready to leave a church. He had been there for a couple years, and they were having a farewell dinner for him. And at that farewell dinner, he tried to encourage the people that were there by telling them not to worry, don't be sad, the next pastor might be better than I am. Out of the back of the room, a little old lady yells, "That's what they said last time, but it keeps getting worse." Now, that's not very encouraging. But we should publicly acknowledge words of encouragement to others. Sometimes public praise can be more meaningful than a private compliment. Secondly, he complimented the man's character. He complimented the man's character. Jesus encouraged the man by complimenting his faith. In verse 10, he says, "Truly I tell you, with no one in Israel have I found," what? "Such faith." Rather than compliment a man on something like how buff he is, or how nice his beard and mustache look, or how you like his new glasses, or how his cologne smells, or how nice the car is that he's driving, rather than saying words like that to compliment, maybe we need to go a little bit deeper. Maybe we need to do like Jesus did and find those important, really important things about the individual to compliment them on, what you appreciate about them. How many of you complimented somebody this morning when you came here? Anybody? Okay, I'm going to give you another opportunity to do that in case you didn't. And I want you to go to someone right now, either sitting next to you, behind you, I don't care where they're at, and I want you to compliment them, but you cannot say superficial things like, "Nice shirt, Frank." You don't do that. That's not what we're doing. I want you to find someone and say something that's meaningful, something that is deep, something that is spiritual, something about them that you really do appreciate, and let them know that.
Thank you for the compliment today, Terry.
You're welcome, Dean. You're having too much fun back in the Baptist section. Now, how easy is that, or how hard is that, to find something deeper to compliment someone on? It should be easy, but sometimes it's hard. I mean, we take people for granted. We like people, we appreciate people, but to get deeper in that relationship, to get deeper in what you appreciate about people. You know, I could tell Linda, I really like the way you play the piano. And she would like that, but it would mean more to her, I think, if I said, "Linda, the feeling and God's Spirit working through you that you feel when you're playing that piano is evident and it touches all of us." Doesn't that mean more than just saying, "Hey, nice job, kiddo"? You know, you okay, Ross? It means more to people when you are specific, when you go deeper. This goes for our family. It goes for our friends, It goes for our brothers and sisters in Christ, our co-workers. If you really want to build somebody up and make them feel good and make them feel appreciated, use words of encouragement that get deep into their lives, not just surface superficiality. That is a word, isn't it? Superficial. It is now. Thirdly, he gave hope for the man's future. All of us want hope for our futures, don't we? As we read the papers and hear the news, we see a lot of people that are hurting, especially our kids, our young people, who don't know what their future holds. They don't know what's coming down the pike for them. They don't know who to talk to. They don't know how to deal with the problems in life. And there are adults that are that way too. All the shootings that we're reading about, all of the rioting that we see in the news, people are hurting today, folks. People need to be encouraged. They need to be built up, not torn down. The bullying that goes on in school, that goes on among even adults on the internet, the junk that I read on Facebook, it's tearing up people's lives. It's hurting. And yeah, well, it's social media. We're just trying to get our opinion out there and talk about what's relevant. Yeah, but there's a way to do it. There's a way to do it without putting the person down, without judging the individual as being useless or stupid or ignorant because of something they believe or something they feel. Yes, it may be silly, it may be stupid to us how people look at things in our world. But we need to start encouraging rather than discouraging. And this is on many different levels that we need to look at. It happens in our own homes. How many words do you say to your kids or to your spouse that are positive and uplifting compared to the words that you say that are discouraging and pulling them down? Being negative, finding fault from anything from the way they drive the car to the way they put the dishes in the dishwasher. I can be negative sometimes. I know that. Because there's certain areas I know in my life that I want things to be just so. And I've been called a perfectionist in some areas of my life. There are things that I will not let my kids do at home because they can't do it right. At least in my estimation. I need to learn, just like all of us need to learn, to be a little more patient, a little more understanding, a little more encouraging of other people. Whether that be with our kids, with those that we work with those that we sit on committees with, at the PTA, whatever it might be. We need to be encouraging because we don't hear enough encouraging words in this world today. We hear so many things that are negative and bring us down. But Jesus gave this man hope for his future. He gave him words of encouragement to build him up, to help him move on with what was going on in his life. He told the man that people like him would be in heaven one day. Isn't that great to know? That if we're faithful to the Lord, that there is a hope and a future. In Matthew 8:11 and 12, he says, I tell you, many will come from the east and west and recline at table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven, while the sons of the kingdom will be thrown into the outer darkness. In that place, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now, that's a little negative, that last part. But what he's saying here is you are not a Jew, but you've got more hope right now with the way you're living in making it to heaven than God's own people over here who are just going through the motions, who don't have the faith you have. And folks, this bothers me and scares me about the church today. So many are out there looking for something. They need hope. They need Jesus. And we've got him. We understand. But yet, many don't appreciate it. And many don't live their life like Jesus really matters. Our commitment level stinks. Our willingness to get out of ourselves and get into Christ and the church, to be active, to be involved, to even show up on Sunday morning. This place should be full every Sunday. Amen? My question is, why isn't it? Why? Why is it whenever we ask for volunteers for things that it's the same people all the time? Well, folks, these same people are getting tired. They're wearing out. And I hate to say it, but some of them are getting old. Most of them. It is time that we step up. It is time that we quit pretending, that we quit sitting back and letting other people do the work and us coasting through. We have a future. But as Jesus said here, if we're not doing what the children of God should do, it's not a happy one. And you may think, why are you bringing that up in a sermon on encouragement? Because I am encouraging you. I'm encouraging you to change if you're not serving God. I encourage you to be more committed if you're not being committed. I encourage you to give your life to Christ fully if you've not given your life to Christ fully. Folks, the time is at hand. We need to take seriously the commands of Christ. Here in Matthew, Jesus points that out. So many times the words that come out of our mouths can change how certain people view their future. What we say to them, how we act can change a person's life. If you're talking about going to church and you're not doing anything, what does that person think about you? If you act one way here and another way during the week, at work and with your family at home and out on the street, on the golf course, on the lake, what's that say? What encouragement does that have toward those people to come to know Jesus Christ, to become a Christian, to become a part of the church? What does that do? That's not encouraging to them. Too many times we get focused on the wrong stuff and we forget what our job is and what we should be doing. It's like the old man that was on his deathbed. He was in agony, he was in pain, he was about ready to check out, and he's laying in bed, just kind of half in and half out, and all of a sudden, the most wonderful smell enters his nostrils, and it's coming from downstairs. And he remembers that smell. It's a smell that he had smelled many times through his married life. It was the smell of the ambrosia of his wife's cooking downstairs. She was baking. And he could tell by the smell that she was baking cookies. And he loved her cookies. And he's thinking, I'm ready to go, but I would just love to have one of those cookies before I go. So he musters up the energy to get out of bed, and he stumbles to the door, and he stumbles over to the stairs, and he slowly begins his descent down to that place, that heaven on earth called the kitchen, where those cookies were waiting for him. He got to the kitchen door, and his wife standing there at the stove. getting ready to pull out some cookies, and he sees on the kitchen table all these gorgeous, wonderful chocolate chip cookies that she made. And he stumbles over. And as he reaches down to take one, she turns around and slaps his hand and says, "Put that down, Melvin. Those are for the funeral." Too many times, we're focused on the wrong thing. Someone has a little bit of hope, and they look at, "Yeah, this is it, and whack, we smack them. We smack them. We take away that last bit of hope for their future. But Jesus gives hope for the future. When we tell others they have a bright future ahead of them, it can be a huge encouragement. Let's start doing that. Let's give people the hope that Jesus gives through our encouragement. And then fourth, Jesus proved his words could be trusted. In verse 13, he says, "Go, let it be done for you as you have believed." And the servant was healed at that very moment. Jesus, more or less, well, he tells this soldier, "Go on, go home, everything's taken care of." And at that moment, that servant was healed. It could have gone either way. He could have lived or died. But when Jesus gave this man hope, he followed through with it. And he doesn't break his promises. Christ always keeps his promise. He can be trusted. If someone constantly breaks their promises, what does that say about that individual? Can you trust them? Do you want to believe anything they say? We have to not only say what we mean, but we need to mean what we say. And we need to follow through. An elderly man was desperately ill, not the same guy with the cookies, this was another guy. And he calls together his three closest friends, his lawyer, his doctor, and his minister. And he tells them, he says, "Fellas," he says, "I don't know if you can take it with you or not, but I'm sure going to try." So right here, guys, are 3 envelopes, each with $100,000 in it. I'm trusting you. You are my closest friends. I'm giving one to each of you. And when you come to my funeral and you come up to the casket, I want you to take that envelope and shove it in my coat pocket. Because if I can take it with me, I'm going to take it with me. So at the funeral, the 3 men each take their turn going up, and they lean down and shove the envelope into his pocket. Well, after the funeral, they're all sitting around one evening, and the minister says, "Fellas, my conscience is getting the best of me." He said, "I've got to tell you," he said, "I took $20,000 out of that envelope, but I took it for a good reason." He said, "I thought that money, it was silly to give him that money and just to be buried, and I thought it could be used more effectively to feed the hungry in our community." And the doctor said, "Well, Padre," he said, "I got to admit too," he says, "I took $50,000 out of the envelope and used it to buy a new CAT scan machine for the hospital. We really needed it, and people can be saved because of that." The lawyer said, "I am ashamed of both of you. This man trusted you with this money to put it in there." He said, "I can't believe you did that." He said, "I ought to go to the authorities and report you for this." But he says, "I won't." He said, "What you guys should have done is what I did. I wrote out a personal check and took the cash out and kept it myself." We need to trust. And we can trust Jesus to follow through, even when our friends and people in this life will not. If we want our words to mean something, we will back them up with our actions. In Proverbs chapter 18, verse 21, It says, death and life are in the power of the tongue. Folks, the words we speak, the things we say can make a big difference. We need to be more encouraging and less discouraging. We need to be more positive and less negative. We need to quit griping and complaining, and we need to start lifting people up and complimenting them rather than tearing them apart. Our words have tremendous power. As our worship team comes, I want us to realize that if we choose to follow Jesus, then we should use our words to encourage others, build them up every chance we get. Christ wants to build you up. He builds us up by letting us know that he loves us. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. Do you want that encouragement to be a hope for your life? Do you want that encouragement to be your future? Then give your life to Jesus today and let him build you up and encourage you. You're worth it so much that he died in your place.